All right, so we live in a time of instant gratification. One device that kind of epitomizes that is the microwave. Okay, we can have food frozen food. Like even if something's frozen, you can have it ready in like 5 minutes, right? Okay, so internet. Like I could sit here right now actually and look up something on the internet. Probably without you guys even knowing it, actually. I could sit here and do that instantly. Okay, we want everything right now. And if we don't get it right now, we're upset sometimes. If you go and order fast food and you don't have it immediately, you're upset. I don't think it was anyone from here, but someone posted on Facebook the other night that they must have ordered a fish sandwich at McDonald's, and they said, what did they have to go catch the fish? We want everything right now. We want it immediately. But sometimes we go to the Bible for answers, and we want to find it right away. We want to like literally sometimes just open our Bible and have the answer right there, without searching, without looking for it. But that's not always the way God works. Sometimes we must be patient for the answer. Sometimes we have to wait for Him to give us the answer. Sometimes the answer takes a little digging. It's not just flip your Bible open and it's right there. Sometimes the answer is right in front of us, but it's not the answer we want. So we have to maybe develop a little bit to see that was the answer. That being said, there's other times, though, where things are laid out plain and simple in Scripture, where it's black and white, if you will, or sometimes red and white, if Jesus said it, right? That it's here's how it goes. Here's what you're supposed to do. Okay, and this is the case with what we call the Great Commission, with Jesus' call to us. So Matthew 28:18 through 20. Says, Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I'm with you always, to the very end of the age. Now, at times, churches will describe themselves as a Great Commission church. They might even put it like on their letterhead, or on their announcements that they scroll, such and such church, a Great Commission church. And historically, these churches do two things that they believe make them a Great Commission church. In verse 19, Jesus says, go, okay? And that's what they do. They go, okay? These churches go. They might send missionaries out. They might send shoeboxes, because that's a form of going and making, of going, right? Therefore, go to all the nations. Maybe they take a trip. We don't have anybody going to Guatemala this year, but a group from our association is in Guatemala right now. So maybe that's how we go, or we go to our neighbors. We invite someone to come and get food out of the food pantry. There's just all these different things. Maybe it's doing some disaster relief. It could be so many different things. So that's the first way that churches have historically said. They do both things. They do that. They go, and then they baptize. Baptize is pretty self-explanatory. Now, I may have told you this before, but I grew up until 6th grade. I was a Mennonite, and the Mennonites sprinkle or pour. It depends on how they put water in their hands and they go like that, and that's how you're baptized. Okay? So the first time I went to a church, we had a Christian church in town, and I went there for Bible school, and they had a baptismal, and it was flush with the stage. They just opened this thing up. And one time during VBS, they jumped in it or something. I was like, I think I was maybe like a 3rd grader. I thought, man, that's cool. They've got a swimming pool in their church. How awesome is that? So I say baptize is self-explanatory, but I didn't know what that was for. So, but we baptize, right? We go. We're pretty good at that. In churches who call themselves Great Commission churches, usually have those two things down. They go. They send people out. They go on short-term mission trips. They send people out long-term mission trips. They support missionaries. They support Lottie Moon. They support Annie Armstrong. They do those things. And those things aren't bad by any means. It's not bad to baptize people, because that means we've got a new believer. That means we're welcoming someone in to the body of Christ. It's obviously not bad to go. Jesus told us to do it. Okay, it's not bad to go and tell people about Him. Okay, but like I said, they're not even close to bad. They're not even remotely bad. Okay, but bread's not bad either, right? Would anybody here be like, no, bread is awful? Like I don't want bread around me at all. Okay, bread is not bad, but by itself, how good is bread? Okay, the Great Commission isn't just a couple pieces of bread. It's not just go baptize, right? I don't know about you guys, but I want something on my sandwich, not just bread. When it was the summer after my senior year, of high school, we went on a mission trip to Jackson, Michigan. And we stayed in this school, and we went to the cafeteria the first night we got there to eat. I'm sorry, this is talking at me. The first night we got there, we went in there to eat. We walk in, and if you've ever either been a high school boy or had a high school boy, they enjoy eating, okay? So we walk in, and they hand us a piece of bread, a small cup of water, like a little coffee cup of water, and a paper towel. And they say, they tell us to be quiet and go sit down. Now, I ate the bread. Like, I didn't even wait. I ate the bread and drank the water. I don't remember the point. There was some point to it, and that's bad that I don't remember the point. Forgive me, that was almost 10 years ago. And I know some of you are like, I remember lots of stuff from 10 years ago. I don't remember the point, so apparently the illustration didn't work. But I wasn't happy with just bread, okay? I wanted more of a sandwich, okay? When I was in junior high and high school, my sandwiches went like this. They had meat. I didn't bring very much meat because I didn't want to waste it. They had meat. They had, that's Miracle Whip. I put Miracle Whip on my sandwiches. They had cheese, and then I would take whatever chip my mom had packed in my school lunch. Well, not school lunch. It was usually for a ball game, and put it on top. And then I would take the sandwich, the bread, and smash it down. And it was efficient, right? That's efficient. Okay, you got your chips and everything all at once. I was getting it done. Okay, that's how I ate a sandwich. That's what I expected on a sandwich. Okay, I wanted some meat on my sandwich. Okay. And in the Great Commission, Jesus put some meat, right? This is turkey, by the way. Jesus put some meat right in the middle of the Great Commission, and it's a lot better than turkey, okay? He says, make disciples. He says, therefore go, okay? And right in between that and baptizing, he says, and make disciples of all nations, okay? Now, the process of making disciples is called discipleship. And George Barna, who, if you spent any time in the church at all, he's like the pollster or the statistician for the unofficial statistician for the church. If you hear a statistic commented in church, or not commented, quoted in church, it's usually by George Barna, okay? And what he said in a book about discipleship is that discipleship is about being devoted and mature followers of Christ. So discipleship, though, can occur only amongst a body of believers, okay? You can't disciple yourself. You can't go, I'm going to determine that I'm going to be a disciple. You can be a disciple of Christ, but you can't disciple yourself. And discipleship comes at a price, though, okay? In order to truly disciple and to be a disciple, you'll often have to forfeit some pretty difficult things, okay? One of those is privacy, okay? And we'll dig a little more into that later. You'll also have to sacrifice time, okay? Discipleship, more than almost anything else, takes time, okay? Barriers, okay? Discipleship is a very connected, very together thing. So you're going to have to, let down your guard. Maybe some prejudices. Maybe you're going to be called to disciple someone who maybe they do things you don't like. Maybe there's something about them you don't like. But that's something that sometimes people have to lay down. And then secrets. Okay. Sometimes, in order to really connect with the person, you've got to share a secret with them. You've got to tell them something that you've never told anyone else, because you're going to reach a limit where, if you don't connect with them in that way, if you don't share with them, you're done. You can't go any farther. You can't develop any farther. So, with those things in mind, those aren't fun things, right? Okay. It's going to be messy, okay? Because getting involved in the lives of other people is messy, okay? We may not see this, but our lives are messy, okay? We have things going on. We have issues. Everyone's got issues, and you know what happens when you mix issues together? It gets messy. When I was in grade school, I wouldn't plan on saying this. We had this hay rack. We'd do this thing in the fall. We'd take this hay rack ride, and you were supposed to bring a can of soup and a sock. And what they do is they pour all the soup together and cook it, and then they give you your can back and put it in the can, and you use the sock to keep it from burning your hand. Now, I see your faces, and you're reacting exactly the way I would react to that every time. Why would I want to eat that? That's gross, okay? The soup's not bad. We've all got our problems, but we can deal with them. We're all right with them. But when you start dumping everybody's problems together, somebody's going to bring tomato soup, and I don't like tomato soup. Okay, somebody would bring tomato soup and just ruin it. Okay, that it gets messy. It gets kind of what is that? Why do you? The soups weren't bad on their own, but mixed together, it was just gross. It was messy. Okay, and we're all sort of messy. So discipleship is going to get messy. So with that in mind, why would you do this? Why would you invest in the discipleship process? Why would you get involved in someone else's life? Well, how about in verse 19 when Jesus says, make disciples? Okay? Jesus literally told us to go make disciples. Now, it's been my experience that you're going to run into people who have plenty of advice to give. My dad and I used to play a lot of paintball together. Well, I mean like once a month, which is a significant amount. And we were playing one time, and there was this guy that stood at the back. In paintball, just generically speaking, you kind of come at each other and try to shoot each other with balls of paint. That's how paintball works, okay? There's this guy at the back telling everyone else what to do, but he's at the back. Paintballs aren't like bullets. They don't go forever. Well, bullets don't go forever either, but they don't go near as far as bullets, okay? So he's basically out of danger, telling everyone else what to do. Well, I've got plenty of stubbornness in me from my mom and my dad. My dad refused to listen to the guy. In fact, at one point he turned around and yelled at him, but that's not important. Anyway, okay, he wasn't taking his own advice. He's telling everyone, move up, go there, but he's not taking his own advice. Well, that's not the case with Jesus, okay? Jesus took his own advice. He made discipleship a priority in his ministry, okay? Very early on in his ministry, Jesus went and started gathering his crew, his group, his 12 guys, to pour into and disciple. Now, I want to kind of make something clear here. We call the 12, the 12 guys that traveled with Jesus, a lot of times we call them the disciples. But if you're a believer, you're a disciple, okay? So everyone's a disciple. It's not just those 12 guys, okay? So John 1:35 through 42 says, "The next day John was there again with 2 of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, 'Look, the Lamb of God.' When the 2 disciples heard this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them and asked, 'What do you want?' They said, 'Rabbi, where are you staying?' 'Come,' he replied, 'and you will see.' So they went and saw where he was staying and spent the day with him. It was about the 10th hour. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, 'We have found the Messiah,' and he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, 'You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas.'" And Cephas is Peter. Okay, we know that Cephas means Peter. So Jesus continues on after this point to gather the remainder of his 12 men that he would spend so much time with, okay? Jesus literally, okay, think about it. He didn't have a house anymore, right? So he's traveling from place to place with 12 guys. Now, the kids who went with me to Red Cloud, they understand what it's like to spend all your time with someone. Because when you get done hiking, it's not like you go sleep in your own cabin or something. You're in a tent with, now obviously boys and girls are separated, but you're with them all day long. The only time you're separate is when you're sleeping. And that's just because you're sleeping, you're not interacting when you're sleeping, okay? So Jesus was with these guys all the time, okay? So he spent literally every waking hour with these guys. He invested almost everything he had in them, because if he was teaching to a group, he was also teaching to them. And we'll get into more of that teaching later, okay? And he fed them, okay? Jesus was investing all he had in their life. Now, I'm not asking you to move in together so that you can disciple each other. That would just, I think that'd get kind of awkward, and it'd get kind of crowded in some instances, okay? But the point is that Jesus spent almost all his time with these 12 guys, okay? He was investing what he had in these 12 guys. Now, even with Jesus, though, the small group of 12 men, within his group of 12, there were 3 that he seemed closer to, okay? And that was Peter, James, and John. And we see at times in his ministry that these 3 seem to be a little closer than the rest. Like I said, for example, in Matthew 26, he's in the garden praying. They're probably one of the most stressful times of Jesus' time here on earth. And who's with him? Peter, James, and John are the ones he took with him, okay? So just looking at Jesus' model for discipleship, he invested in 3 beyond the 12, okay? Now, so discipleship was a priority for Jesus. That's pretty clear. I mean, I think we would all agree on that. But how did he do it? In his book, The Disciple-Making Church, a guy named Bill Hull, he lays out Jesus' model for discipleship in 3 steps. And the first of those steps is, come and follow me. Okay? In Mark 1:17 and 18, Jesus literally said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." At once they left their nets and followed him. Okay, so this is about development. Okay, he's training and establishing new believers. He's showing them how to do it, and he's doing it with them. Okay, this is what we read earlier, the calling of the 12. Okay, just like that, I will make you fishers of men. He's not just saying, "Hey, follow me around." Okay, if any of you have a younger sibling, you know about following, or maybe you were the younger sibling that followed. Okay, it's beyond that though. But we were telling Maddox all the time, "Listen, you're the big brother. You're the example. He's going to copy you." Okay, it's kind of about that. but Jesus wanted them to see how he was doing this, how he was doing ministry, how he was living life, okay? It's kind of, when you go to college, a lot of fields of study require an internship. Well, that's what it's about. It's about going and seeing how they do that, how they work, how they make things work. In theory, how they're successful, but that's not necessarily always the case. Over with teachers, I saw Mr. Overstreet over here. Student teachers, that's the idea with them. So they can see how it's done before they actually go do it themselves. Okay? I'm sorry, I was wrong there. I started with the second step. The first step is come and see. Just come and watch Jesus do it. Okay? That's the first step. Okay? And that's those people that would follow him around. That's more like the little brother or sister. Okay? Just following you around, watching what you do. And then comes the come and follow me, where Jesus is starting to teach them and develop them. Now the third step is come and be with me. And that's where Jesus really pulled the disciples in. He really engaged them, okay? Because you can follow someone and be, not with them. Like if I had, some of you guys have an intern, okay? So if I had an intern, they would come and they would, help me with youth and maybe, come into the office and learn some stuff. But in the end, we're gonna separate, okay? To come and be with me is to spend an exorbitant amount of time together, okay? Like Jesus and the apostles, okay? They spent all this time together, okay? That's come and be with me. They're literally with each other. Throughout the Gospels, there's examples of Jesus pulling his disciples aside and teaching them more deeply. There were times where Jesus spoke to great crowds, and then afterwards he would share more with his disciples, okay? He would teach something to the crowd. He'd give the Sermon on the Mount, or something. He would preach to the crowd, and then after they were all gone, he'd pull them aside and go, hey, I want to teach you a little more. I want to dig you in a little deeper, okay? And that's that third step. Come and be with me. There were other times, and probably more than we have any idea, where Jesus taught them as they traveled and experienced life together, okay? Keep in mind, these guys are walking everywhere. Now, if you've walked a lot together with someone, you're spending a lot of time with them. There's a lot of downtime there, especially, if you're walking together, shopping, or if you're walking together, I don't know, in a new city experiencing things. That's one thing, but these guys are walking from town to town, okay? There's a lot of time there to discuss things, and I'm sure there's a lot that was said that we have no idea about. But one place that we do is in Matthew 24, right after Jesus had finished teaching. It says, Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call to his attention his buildings. Do you see all these things? He asked. I tell you the truth, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Okay, this is kind of an example of both, okay? Jesus had been teaching as a synagogue, and as they're continuing on their way, Jesus drops this bombshell. Hey, all these buildings are going to be gone. Okay, all these buildings are going to fall down. And then to the disciples, and then he goes on to teach them about the signs of the end. Okay, after that he starts to. I think some of you were probably thinking about these things, maybe like late last night or early this morning when you heard about the earthquake. Okay, or maybe you felt the earthquake. I don't know. Maybe you started going, hey, wait a second. Jesus said something about earthquakes. This is where he starts teaching them that, okay? So he goes on to tell them things that he hasn't told the crowd, okay? The thing about the disciples is not everyone is ready to learn, okay? In discipleship, not everyone's on the same level as far as what they know, as their maturity, okay? Jesus could have taught this stuff in the synagogue, okay? Instead of coming out and telling the disciples about it, he could have taught it in the synagogue, but it wasn't the right place and it wasn't the right crowd, okay? They weren't ready for that. But these men were selected by Jesus to live life with him and to learn from him. Okay? Now, they were by no means perfect, but they were his 12. Okay? They were the 12 that he selected. Now, the final step is remain in me. And in this final phase, in Jesus' example, he sent out the 12. In Mark 6, we see Jesus send out the 12 to do ministry. Okay? He's not just keeping them with him all the time, going, okay, watch me, see what I do, just stay with me all the time. Okay? That's not what he did. In fact, Mark 6 is not too long into his ministry. Okay? That's not like right before he goes and is crucified. Okay? He sends them out. Okay? Now, obviously following this, like I said, there's accounts of the 12 being with Jesus. So they came back. And when they came back, he discussed the ministry that had been done, probably corrected some mistakes, because if you know anything about Peter, Peter probably messed up. Peter was really gung-ho for Jesus. But he got called Satan by Jesus, so he obviously made some mistakes, okay? So Jesus took advantage of what, to phrase it nicely, would be a teachable moment. That's when someone messes up and you take that opportunity. Mr. Overstreet, you have teachable moments, right? Yeah. I'm not picking on him, it's just, All right, so discipleship is not like walking on water, feeding 5,000, where we go, wow, that was amazing. What Jesus did there, that was really cool. But I'm not going to do that. I mean, now I'm not saying it's not possible, because everything's possible with God. But that's not something we necessarily walk around going, every time you go to the swimming pool or the lake, you don't go, all right, this might be the time Jesus lets me walk on water, and just, take a step out there. You're not doing that, okay? Discipleship's not like that, though, okay? Discipleship is what Jesus told us to do, okay? We don't just learn about discipleship and go, that was awesome. Jesus is amazing because he did discipleship. No, he tells us to make disciples. So how do we do that? Well, we follow the example that I just laid out. Come and see, okay? You invite people to come to worship with you. You invite people to work alongside you if you help at Stomp. You invite people to go with you if you're going to serve someone within the community. You say, come with me. Just follow me around and see how I live my life and why I live this way. And the next step is come and follow me. Show them how and do it with them. This is the heart of discipleship, okay? Smaller groups of people gathering together as a community of believers, living life together, and that's key, okay? Because discipleship isn't just, all right, we're going to meet, we're going to talk about the Bible, and then, we're going to go our merry way, okay? Discipleship is about living life together, because that's the key there. Jesus didn't just, pull these guys in, teach them some stuff, and then go on, okay? They knew Jesus, and to truly disciple people, and to truly be a disciple, you have to live life together. You have to know each other. Now, obviously, a huge part of discipleship is learning about Christ and seeking to be more like him. And that comes through living life together and learning. Now, you don't have to have the entire group together for discipleship to happen. Okay? A great deal of discipleship, as I said, comes from knowing each other, being honest with each other, whether there's 15 of you or 2 of you. Okay? Like I said, there were times when Jesus had just those 3, and I'm sure there were other times that we don't necessarily know about, where Jesus was one-on-one with a guy. Okay? And he's teaching them something, and he's telling them something. Okay? Now, the third step, as you'll remember from earlier, is come and be with me. Okay? You invite the disciple a little closer and begin to teach them to be a disciple maker. This is where you go from, okay, you come and you watch what I do, you see, how we do this, and then you come and you kind of become part of our group and we do life together. And then you go, all right, you're moving along in this process. Now, there's no set amount of time or anything. Okay? This is very fluid. Okay? But you see their development and you go, okay, you're ready to start transitioning into learning to become a disciple maker. So this is where you teach them to become a disciple maker. And then the final step is remain in me. Okay, just as Jesus sent out the 12, all disciples will eventually be ready to go and do the work. If they're not, then there was no discipleship happening. Okay, there was no development. Okay, because if you just sit and learn together for your entire life, what good is that? Okay, yeah, you're learning, you're gaining that knowledge about the Bible, but if we have knowledge, if you're just sitting there absorbing the knowledge, it's like those academics, those professors who just learn and learn and learn and don't necessarily tell anybody about it, okay? What are you doing, okay? If we sit there and just absorb, and maybe you have this great understanding of who Christ is, but if you're not going out and advancing the kingdom of Christ, what was the point? Why is it so great that you understand what propitiation is if you're not sharing the gospel with others, if you're not advancing the kingdom of Christ? Now, because no one is ever done being a disciple, they'll return to you. Your disciples will return to you, and you should return to your mentor, if you will, your disciple maker. Okay? I have mentors. I have men who are discipling me. Mike Duncan is the youth pastor at Woodward. He is almost at the exact same age as my dad. So he's been in youth ministry. I mean, he's been a believer for a long time. He's been in youth ministry for a long time. Andrew Dostal over at Lincoln Avenue. These guys not only have done youth ministry for a long time, but they're men who I look up to. Okay? Now, they also have the right to speak into my life. If I tell them about something, or if they can tell that there's something going on that shouldn't be, they'll call me on it. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sorry. So, actually, we'll talk about that pretty soon. So there are certain things that are key to the discipleship process. Okay? First of all, group size. Okay? Jesus gathered 12. He didn't gather 25. He didn't gather just 3. He gathered 12. And studies today show that 12 to 18 is the best size for discipleship. Imagine that. Jesus got it right. I can't believe that happened. Okay? Teaching. Matthew 28:20 tells us, teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. It's all well and good to get together and talk about life and know each other, but if you're not teaching about what Jesus did, if you're not pouring that into each other, teaching each other about Jesus and how great he is, then you're not truly doing discipleship. Okay, time. We talked a lot about how much time Jesus poured into those other men. Okay, it's going to take time. That's one thing it's going to take. History shows us that anything really of any worth takes time. Okay, and that's it's kind of being lost, as I said, in our kind of instant gratification day and age. I talked about privacy earlier, about losing our privacy. Okay, you're going to have to give up some privacy. Our faith is personal. Okay, you have a personal relationship with Jesus, but it's not a private relationship with Jesus. Does that make sense? Okay, in Philippians 2, Paul compares his relationship with Timothy to that of a father and a son. Okay, he knew Timothy well. They were personal with each other. Okay, they shared life with each other. They shared their relationship with each other. Okay, and then in 2 Corinthians 8, he refers to Titus as his partner. Okay, just as Jesus did, Paul spent a great deal of time with those that he was discipling, and he knew them well. Okay, discipleship can't happen in a cold relationship, in a relationship that's not personal. Accountability. Proverbs 27:17 tells us, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." You've got to be able to call each other out and to be real. That's what I have with those guys. Okay, I have, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this. You know plenty of people who, when you say, "How are you doing?" what do they say? Fine, or maybe I'm busy, but something generic, right? And one of my favorite pastors says that that's a problem in our churches because everyone's fine. Everyone's okay. Everyone's doing good. But there's something wrong with the wiring. There's something going on. Maybe it's big, maybe it's little. But no one knows until the house is on fire, okay? No one knows if anything's wrong until, I believe the example he uses, a man embezzles money from work or the family splits up. No one knew anything was going on. Well, if they had had accountability, if they had had someone digging into their life and going, "Hey, you're not acting the same today. What's going on?" Then maybe that could have been stopped. Maybe that could have been turned, and they would have been growing and developing. Encouraging, also though, there's the other side of that. Okay, you want to be real. You want to hold each other accountable. You want to go, "Hey, listen, straighten up." But you've also got to be encouraging. Okay, some of us are better at one than the other. I was on a mission trip. I took some kids actually to Jackson, to the same place I'd gone, and they made me the crew encourager. And I kept trying to tell them, "Listen, that's not necessarily the right idea. I'm not the most encouraging person." So I really had to work on being positive and being encouraging about their work and about what we were doing there. But Hebrews 10:24-25 tells us, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see that day approaching." Okay, there's a balance here. You've got to call each other out, like I said. It's not all about coming down on each other, about laying the hammer down, about giving them the paddle, okay? It's also about encouraging them, about building them up, but building them up in the right way, okay? Not building them up, "Oh, you're so fantastic." It's about encouraging them to love one another and to do good deeds, to do the work that we're called to do, okay? The next word is intentional. And this is a word that I hadn't heard much about until I went out to seminary at Liberty, about being intentional. And all this means is that in everything you do, you're thinking about not only how it's going to affect people, but how it's going to affect someone for the gospel, okay? It means that you decide where you're going to eat. Maybe you eat the same place, and this is, probably more relevant for people with a lot of choices where they eat. So say you live in a bigger city and you go to the same Starbucks every day, okay? A point that a pastor, the same guy I guess, makes is that barista, the person serving you the coffee, is a person. So you're intentional on how you deal with them. You're intentional in your mood with them. Because they should know that you're a believer, so then you should be intentional on how you speak with them. With your children, with Maddox, if he's telling me how pretty something is, I talk to him about the fact that God made that, and God made it look that way. And so it's about thinking about what you're doing. So in discipleship, when you're spending time with someone, think about how that is going to affect their view of the gospel, their understanding of Christ, and their love for Christ. So intentional is just about thinking about what you're doing. Available. You can't be 9 to 5 and disciple someone. You've got to be available for them, both time-wise and emotionally, if you will. I'm not a huge touchy-feely guy, so don't think that. But you've got to be willing to share with them, those secrets we talked about earlier. You've got to be available in that way to them. Vulnerable, that kind of goes with available. I actually kind of covered that just now. Just two more. Equal. You may be a more mature believer, but under grace we're all equal. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "For it's by grace you have been saved through faith, and that this not from yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one may boast." Okay? And then the last one, so we're all on equal standing, We're on equal standing. Okay? We're all the same in God's view, under grace. Okay? You may be more mature, and that's why you're a disciple you're the one making the disciple. But you're all equal under God's grace, so you don't hover that over them, if you will. You don't kind of hold over them that you're better than they are. Okay? The last one is together. Romans 10:10-15. "Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn." Okay, that's not just about, hey, we're together. Like right now, we're together, right? We're all in the same room. We're together. It's about sharing life with each other. Mourn with those who mourn. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Okay? It's about living life together, not just, hey, I heard that this happened to them. Be excited with them, or, be sad with them. It's about knowing each other and being involved in each other's life. So, as I get toward the end, I want to revisit the question, why? Why should we make discipleship a priority? Well, because disciples live life differently. Those who have been discipled know and understand that they have a future changed by their relationship with Christ. They affect the world around them as a result of their relationship with Christ. They don't just, kind of walk around with their, I got out of heaven, I got out of hell. You don't want to get out of heaven. I got out of hell free card. They don't walk around just with that. They change the world around them. Secondly, younger generations are leaving the church behind. My generation and even generations ahead of mine are leaving the church, and it's partially due to a lack of connection and a lack of discipleship. There hasn't been anyone grabbing them and pulling them in to the church and pulling them into the body and saying, listen, not only, does Jesus care about you, I care about you, and I want to invest in your life, and I want to tell you and teach you about Jesus. I had a man, I grew up in Protections, most of you know that, or some of you, I don't know, and our church ran 40 or 50 people, but we had this Sunday school teacher who made a point to pour into the 5 of us that were in the high school Sunday school class. He spent time with us. He did things outside of just Sunday school with us. He's the one who took us on those mission trips. And that helped pull me into church, okay? That helped grab me. That was my sense of connection to something. That was what pulled me in. Okay, so I believe that discipleship will help us in curbing that tide of people just leaving the church. Another reason is that in the Great Commission, Jesus told us to. Jesus blatantly said, make disciples. Okay? Now, the greatest motivation, though, to make disciples is a passion for the person and the work of Christ because of what Jesus did. Because Jesus humbled himself, became a baby, born in a manger, lived a life of poverty while he walked around serving us, serving those who needed him, those who were weak, those who were sick. And then he went to the cross to die for the sins of mankind, everyone ever, and then now has returned to glory with his Father, okay? Because of that, that's our motivation, because of what Christ has done for us. That's why we should make disciples. So.